So for today's video, we're going to be getting this Briggs & Stratton powered Craftsman running. I left gas in it last season, so it probably needs a carburetor cleaning. Not a huge deal, but that's why you should always run fuel stabilizer in it. I can't remember if I had that in this tank of gas or not. So we'll pull it apart just to see what kind of shape it's in and go from there. I also have a brand new hose and gun for this machine if it works, because I am going to be putting it up to sell it. So let's get started. First thing we'll do is remove the air filter. That's all you do for that. Now I'm going to remove this top cover. We have a screw here and a screw over here. We'll pull that off, see what's needed to remove the carburetor. So we can see that there is a mass of linkages down here. So what I'm actually going to do is we're going to pull the bowl off of the bottom and drain it, see what kind of shape the fuel's in. 2 5/16 bolts. Just going to let that kind of sit right into this line off. This PCV line is pretty much done for. This is a first. Normally these Briggs & Stratton engines all have standard sized fasteners, but this one has 10mm bolts that hold the carb to the side of the block. Very carefully pull the whole thing out. This looks like it just kind of pops off of there. So let's see what kind of shape the carburetor's in. Metric on that one too, I guess. 12mm. 13mm. Yeah, I've never seen this on any of the other Briggs that I've worked on. So we'll just go ahead and remove it. Not too bad, but we're going to run this thing through the ultrasonic cleaner, clean it out a good bit. Yeah, this thing's really gummed up. I'm gonna put this thing in upside down to start, and I'm gonna run this through a few cycles. We'll have it in this way, then I'll flip everything over after the first cycle, and then we'll go from there. All right, so I ended up running it through about 4 or 5 times, kind of lost count, but we do have some work we need to do to this carburetor, so let's go ahead and remove it. I already took the jet out because that was cleaned pretty sufficiently. But the rest of this seemed to have come out okay. Not too bad. I'll let that dry off, see where it gets us. Throw this lid back on. All right, so we've got the carburetor itself, and what I'm gonna do here, I think these are still seized up. This one's not too bad. This one is not seized up at all. So it looks like that did its job for the most part. We're gonna leave this one alone. There's no reason to pull this apart, but I am gonna take this part out because we still have some congealed fuel here. So it's not a big deal. See if this thing will cooperate. Nope. Unfortunately, this is something that I run across a lot when trying to remove these. The fasteners can get stuck, seized up. They don't like to cooperate. So we're just going to remove this one. Oh yeah, we can see all the nasty fuel here. So that's easy enough to clean. You just wipe that off with a rag or something. Now we have the inside of the carb, which these can kind of be a pain to clean out because they're not really all that easy to get to. But you guys can see how nasty that is. What I am going to do is I'm going to take this over to the air compressor and see if I can blow that out. It did an okay job. Still kind of dirty in there. Let's see if we can move the rest of it. Grab my plastic scrub brush here. Some isopropyl alcohol. Looks much better. Just want to make sure that everything goes back correctly. So if you remember, start of the video, this was facing the camera, obviously because we have to get the screw out. And then this functions just like this. You can see how everything was lined up here. So this went in just like that because you can see the lines on the piece here. See if we can get this back on. Working as advertised. So let's get this thing back together, get it back in the machine. Needle's actually in really good shape. I forgot to stick this thing into the cleaner because it was just, you know, left in here. But this one's actually got a little bit of a spring in it. And it's working perfectly fine. I seldom ever have issues with needles to begin with. Most of the time, all they need is a little bit of a cleaning here, but the rest of it works perfectly fine. So we'll just stick that back on. Works as advertised. So now, just throw the ball back on, make sure that pin is lined up. Couple whacks of the impact. And that's good enough for me. Let's put it back on the machine. All right, so here's probably the most tricky part, getting all the linkages back together. Remember, this spring that fell off, that goes right here. But first, we're gonna get this one ready because that's where this goes. Right up here. But we'll get the big linkage back on first. Just like that. And we'll get this back on here. Just make sure everything works accordingly. And we got this. This slides right back here. Just like that. Up and in place. That's how those linkages go back on. So now you have 2 more springs. And for this, what we're going to do is kind of get everything in place, sink those 2 bolts back down, and then these springs will be a lot easier to work with. So even I have to go back from time to time and check photos of this kind of stuff, because I haven't really worked on a carburetor like this one before. So this little notch here is actually supposed to be along that edge, and we can see it works appropriately now. So this guy goes into that little hole on this linkage. Can't really get the camera to see it too well, but I'm just going to slide it on there. You guys can see it, see where it's sitting. Just throw the spring back on. So now we should be good to go. So just grab our other set of springs. Make sure that's lined up with that gasket that's there, flush and flat. Now at this point, I'm just going to put these bolts back in. So hopefully the carburetor will stay and cooperate. There we go. Everything's on and in place. Now when I go to run this, I'm going to leave this top cover off just so I can see all the linkages working, hopefully. But I will put the air box back on just to kind of get this out of the way. So we don't have any fuel leaking out. This fuel does still smell decent, so I'm not worried about that right now. It's good enough for testing purposes. So we're going to bring this outside and see if we can get it to start. Gotta hook up some water to it first though. So I'm letting all the air out of the system. Got the new hose and gun on. Water's obviously hooked up. Now we're just gonna start it and see what happens. Check the oil. Oil is good, right where it should be. show you guys what was going on with it. This linkage here I had all the way over here, so it was kind of getting hung up. I just flipped it back over to this side, so now it's perfectly fine. Well, I'm happy with that. Runs really good now that I mess with the linkages, so I'm just gonna put that cover back on here, and it's pretty much ready to sell. So make a good pressure washer for somebody. Nice and quiet too.